Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another Modern Horizons draft video. And today, first pick Sylvan Anthem. We could play a green deck. This is a very strong card, especially in green. Playing creatures, being able to modify your top deck, and just in general making all of your creatures bigger. This is a very strong first pick. I think Aethersworn Sphinx has a similar capacity in that it really guides what you're doing. Aethersworn Sphinx is probably a better pick, but I've not gotten to do this yet, so I'm gonna take the Sylvan Anthem and we'll see what happens. Really wish I'd taken the Sphinx because, man, the Arcbound Shikari would be quite good. In fact, I probably should still take that and still try and go into some kind of artifact deck, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm going to take Wave Sifter. It is a green creature for Sylvan Anthem. It's very strong. It's a 5-mana 3/2 flyer, which is an okay rate, but it gives you 2 redraws, effectively, because it gives you 2 clues. And I mean, Sylvan Anthem makes it a 4/3 flyer, which is a really good rate. Also, evoking this still can get you a Scry, so it can give you a little bit of instant advantage with Sylvan Anthem on the board. Okay. I really like Arcus Acolyte. This card is very strong. It's very good in the archetype that it's for, which is the 1/1 counter archetype, because it ensures that you can get 1/1 counters on creatures that don't have them. And then, like, if you get Smell Fear or other proliferate shenanigans, it's just fantastic. So we're going to take the Acolyte. Now, whether we're green-blue or green-white or mono-green, who knows yet, but I'm pretty sure Arcus Acolyte in the green-white deck is a lot stronger than Wave Sifter is in the green-blue deck. Okay. So Steel Dromedary is okay in the green-white deck, but Smell Fear is going to be much better. This is the premier removal spell for the 1/1 counter deck because it's a fight spell that proliferates, which is just absurd. So we'll take that. We're probably not playing Wave Sifter. We're probably just going to focus hard into the green-white deck. And if that Captured by Legox comes around, we're set up to play a very strong game. Okay. I do really like Foundation Breaker. It does synergize with Sylvan Anthem because it is a green card. Deepwood Denizen, sort of the same way. I'm inclined to actually take the Mouser here, though. Because the lifelink matters quite a lot. I think we got to take the Breaker. There's been a lot of cases where we've been playing decks without enough Naturalize effects in this format. And while this doesn't directly synergize with, like, Acolyte or 1/1 counter stuff, this isn't uncommon. In theory, we'll see a Mouser or a Break Ties or something come around. We got to take the Breaker, though. I'm going to put Wave Sifter in the sideboard because I don't think we're going to be playing with that at all. Okay, let's see. Chatterstorm. This is green creatures you control, not non-token green creatures. So that is a point in Chatterstorm's favor. Jewel-Eyed Cobra is good. Just having a Death Touch creature with a fight spell is fantastic. The fact that it makes treasure tokens means it can fix for you. Piercing Rays is decent removal. It's not amazing removal, but it's okay. And Landscaper Kolos can fix if we need it to. I think the pick is between the Cobra and the Piercing Rays. We're not going to cast a lot of spells for Chatterstorm, and I think I would rather have the creature this early. Okay. In this pack, we've got Abundant Harvest, and we have Crack Open, and Thornglint Bridge. Thornglint Bridge is good because it helps us cast a double green spell like Sylvan Anthem, as well as splash any white spells we may need to cast. Abundant Harvest is nice because it always guarantees that you can top deck the type of card that you need. And Crack Open is less important because it's a common, and I did take Foundation Breaker, so I'm okay passing the first one that I see. There'll probably be a pack where that's the only green card in it later. And I think I'm going to take the Fixing. I think it's just better for us right now. Okay, Break Ties is good because it is a Naturalize that we can reinforce. So we can just put a 1/1 counter on a thing that doesn't have it yet. I think taking the Jade Avenger is actually a higher priority right now. I really like Break Ties. I actually like it better than Crack Open. But this card, while it looks incredibly underwhelming, like it looks like a Grizzly Bears, I think this card is actually really good. Soul of Migration, I think, is a little bit more expensive than I want to go for right now. Duskshell Crawler is great for the 1/1 counter deck because all of your creatures with 1/1 counters on them have trample, so you can break board stalls when your Arcus Acolytes and 9/9, and in general just have a good time. Flourishing Strike is a pretty good combat trick. I think Blacksmith Skill, even though we don't have any artifact creatures yet, is probably better because we can use it to blank removal. We can use it to make creatures indestructible. We don't really play around with power and toughness naturally. Like we don't have anything that scales off of power and toughness other than just 1/1 counters, so I think the skill is better. Smell Fear is definitely better than Break Ties, even though this is the second Smell Fear. I want basically as many like free proliferates as we can get. Caprichrome, I will put in the sideboard. I'm not thrilled to have it. There's a Break Ties. I will take a Break Ties. I'll take a Legion Vanguard for the side and a Galvanic Relay, which I'm not playing. All in all, this is a pretty good start. If we can stick to mostly green creatures because of Sylvan Anthem, that would be ideal. I still would probably take a like an Arcbound Mouser. Now, Sanctifier Envec is kind of interesting. If you play against the right deck, this card can just win you the game. But I really want Scurry Oak, because Scurry Oak makes green tokens, is a green creature, puts 1/1 counters on itself with its own ability, and we have multiple proliferate cards. I actually think this card is going to be stronger than Sanctifier Envec, especially because we are going to be almost entirely green-based. We're already like hoping to cast a double green spell on turn 2, and casting a double white spell seems counterproductive. This card may actually wheel, because there's not a lot of decks that can actually cast this, especially not on curve. So, I mean, like, we could get it, we could put it in the sideboard, depending on how many white cards we have, just to maybe have as a hedge versus Rakdos-colored decks. Okay, Titania, Protector of Argoth. Argoth? This is a very good card for us. It's a 5-mana 5/3. It potentially makes a token if we get a land to go from the battlefield to the graveyard. I mean, I wouldn't mind a Prototype. Prototype's pretty good in this deck. I wouldn't mind a Terramorph, or a Daggertooth, or a Kirin, or a Funnelweb Recluse. Something from this pack should come around to us, unless every other person is in our draft archetype, and considering we just got past a Mythic, that doesn't seem to be the case. I will take a Smell Fear here over a Goblin Bombardment. Unbound Potential would be what I hope comes around from this pack, but red seems to be quite open. There was a Calibrated Blast in the pack before. Okay, Knighted Mirror would not be bad. I think Daggertooth is better for us because it's green. It has Proliferate stapled to it. Yeah, I in general just think this is better for us. We're going to be very hard into green with maybe a splash for white spells. So our options now are Abiding Grace or Daggertooth. I think Abiding Grace is actually a much stronger card. The problem is we have none of the synergizing 1-drops yet. So we need Mouser or we need Mere Scrappling. And Scrappling Abiding Grace is actually a fantastic combo, but I think Daggertooth is better for us right now. If we can incidentally get an Abiding Grace, I wouldn't mind, but I'm not going to take other cards over it. Duskshell Crawler I think is better for us than the Kirin, just because it's cheaper and it's green. Okay, Verdant Command is very good, as is Thraben Watcher. So Verdant Command, we can make some squirrel tokens, we can counter a loyalty ability, exile a card in a graveyard, or gain life. The fact that this makes 2 tokens is good, even though they're tapped and it's not quite a Raise the Alarm. I think 2 tokens for 2 mana and gaining life is good. Thraben Watcher might actually be better for us, because the Anthem effect and the Vigilance matters a ton. I'll take the rare, though. Okay, we can take a Thornglint Bridge, or we can take a Terramorph. Terramorph is kind of nice, because Terramorph fixes for us and kind of ramps. It thins our deck a little bit. It is a 4-mana sorcery, though, and it's not like we have any landfall stuff. This works off of lands going to the grave. I actually think taking the Thornglint Bridge, the fixing, is better for us, especially because we're lacking 1-drops. Starting on a tap land doesn't feel as bad, at least at this point in time. I will take a Soul of Migration. I'm probably not playing it. Okay. Daggertooth number 3, Funnelweb Recluse number 1, or Guardian Kirin number 1. As sick as Daggertooth is, we don't have a ton of ways to get counters on it. We can do Acolyte. I guess we have the Crawlers and a Break Ties. So it's not that bad. I think having a Funnelweb Recluse over a 3rd Daggertooth is probably fine. I definitely want some reach because of the lack of flying, and I think it is better than the Kirin for us at this point in time. Unbounded Potential is great. Jewel-Eyed Cobra I will take. Crack Open's fine for the sideboard. Another Jewel-Eyed Cobra, and a Jewel-Eyed Cobra. All right. Well, we've got all the Death Touch we'll need, for sure. So what are we looking for now? I do want an Arcbound Mouser, if I can find one. I wouldn't mind a Mirror Scrappling, but really what I'm looking for is a Constable of the Realms, which I don't think I've seen yet in this draft. If I did, not taking it was a mistake, unless it was like, you know, I took Titania over it or something like that. Constable of the Realms is like the biggest payoff for the green-white 1/1 counter deck. Just because you can like exile all your opponent's non-land permanents if you have enough proliferate stuff. Oh my gosh, Endurance, and we're in the colors to actually play it. That's, at the time of this recording, it was $50 the other day. It's $62 right now. So, absolutely taking Endurance. That's fantastic. We do not have a lot of removal. Glinting Creeper, we only have 2 colors, so in theory it's a 5-mana 4/4 that's just 1/1 counters. It's not great. I will be taking the Captured by Legox. I wouldn't mind a prototype, but like I said, we're trying to avoid white creatures because of Sylvan Anthem. Okay, now in this pack, Cruciak is actually really, really good for us for a number of reasons. It can get 1/1 counters onto anything. I still think I want 1 Mouser, and I think Mouser is more likely to be picked than the Cruciak is, even with prototype in the same pack. So I'm going to take the Mouser. Hopefully I don't regret doing that. Deepwood Denizen's fantastic for us. This potentially just draws us a bunch of cards. Dusk Shellcrawler number 3, Blacksmith Skill, there's a Knighted Mirror, a Blessed Respite, and a Glorious Enforcer. Glorious Enforcer I've got a feeling we could never cast. The skill would be fine. I think I'm going to take the Crawler, though. Just because it seems like where we're going to be lacking the most is putting 1/1 counters onto things. Okay, this is not a Gaia's Will deck. At this point, I will take a Guardian Kirin. I will take Ravenous Squirrel. If I can find a Dark Moss Bridge by the end of this draft, I can definitely splash its ability. We don't really sacrifice any artifacts or creatures. I think we can make a couple of clues. No, we can't, actually. Do we have anything that sacrifices at all? I have Funnel Web Recluse. That makes a clue. This is actually, like, it's still a somewhat reasonable 1-drop. Oh, we make some treasures. Yeah, that's fine. I can take a prototype. That would be okay. Otherwise, I can take another Daggertooth. The 2-drop slot and the 3-drop slot are kind of heavy, so I'm going to take the Daggertooth here. Funnel Web Recluse is fine. Don't mind having a second one there. I think I'm fine taking the creature, because I'm probably going to cut the most of these Cobras. The Unbounded Potential is great as another Proliferate trick. Actually, I have 23 creatures in the deck right now. Now let's take the Potential. Cruciak came all the way around. That's fantastic. I'll take a Marble Gargoyle for the sideboard. I'll take a Knighted Mirror for the sideboard. Bottle Golems for the sideboard. Okay, so we're not playing the Soul. Let's take a look at our curve here. It's not looking too bad, really. Now, Titania turned out not that great, because we don't have... I guess, like, I could play Caprichrome and sack our artifact lands, but I actually don't think it's that good. It's just a 5-mana 5/3, and I guess if we get Vindicated or Milled, maybe there's a way for me to reanimate a land, but it's not like we discard... I guess I could play, like, a Swamp to, like, sacrifice the lands. That's a very specific circumstance. And it's not free. If it was free, then sure. Okay, I'm gonna cut a couple of Cobras to start. I may not actually play Verdant Command. So I've got to cut 6 cards. Us curving out at 5 is fine. We have a very light white splash, which is nice, because it makes our mana a lot easier. I mean, maybe I don't play the Mouser. The reason I like the Mouser a lot is because we have so many early, like, Proliferate and 1/1 counter effects, and the lifelink matters so much for, like, breaking symmetry when you're trying to race and stuff like that. The mana cost is very not 0, especially, like, playing a Plains on turn 1. I'm not sure how likely that's going to be. I'll have to see after we kind of make the mana base, and I might have to swap it out for something else. I'm going to go down to 1 Cobra. Each Cobra I cut makes the Squirrel a lot worse, because not having treasures means that it's not going to naturally get larger. I mean, it's something to play and then curve into like Duskshell Crawler, so like it's not worthless, but actually that's probably why we should keep the Mouser, is the Mouser makes the Crawlers and the Smell Fears and the Unbounded Potentials like a lot better on turn 2. I think I'm only going to play one Unbounded Potential for now. Man, not playing Verdant Command, not playing Titania. I might as well just cut all my rares, right? Yeah, we're never going to put a land in the grave unless our opponent does it for us. And if they see a Titania out there, they're not gonna give us a free 5/3, that's for sure. Like, there's no circumstance where we play a Titania, she's sitting on the board, and an opponent vindicates a land. They vindicate Titania. Like, I mean, unless they're just trying to, like, meme as they're losing. But, I very much like these cards. Yeah, I'm gonna cut Titania. Because I actually like the Recluse being our top end. Probably need to cut a 4-drop. Foundation Breaker can be played as a Naturalize. Bannerhide Crew Shock can be played as, like, basically a non-creature combat trick on 2. Maybe well, no, I really want the Break Ties in the main if I can keep it. I don't want to cut the Daggertooths because of the Proliferate. Like, if you put a counter on Daggertooth, and then you Smell Fear, Proliferate, fight something with Daggertooth, Proliferate, you're probably winning the game. And the fact that we have 3 of each of those makes a huge difference. I could cut a Recluse and then just have it in the sideboard if my opponent's playing a ton of flyers. That's not unreasonable. Like, it doesn't contribute to the primary 1/1 counter game plan, but it does give us a little bit of sustain because it's not that difficult to turn on Morbid, to give us an Investigate trigger to just draw another card. Our curve isn't looking too bad overall. I still need to cut 2 cards. Or cut a card and run 16 lands and 41 cards, which I'm not a huge fan of, but I have done in the past. I have 18 creatures, which is a really good amount when you have a creature-focused deck like this. We don't need non-creatures specifically, but I'm not cutting Smell Fear, I'm not cutting Sylvan Anthem, especially after we like drafted our whole deck around it. I don't want to go lower than 17 creatures, which means I can cut another creature, but if I do, then I need to cut a non-creature, or I need to cut 2 non-creatures. And if I'm cutting anything from the main deck, it's either an Unbounded Potential or a Break Ties, or I guess maybe a Blacksmith skill. We don't have... this is not like the last green-white deck I drafted, where we had the 5-mana 3/3 lifelink white creature that buys back a cheap permanent, and we don't have Timeless Witness to buy back things like Blacksmith skill. Which I think makes them a little bit worse, because like when you're buying back Blacksmith skill a couple of times and you make, you blank 3 removal spells, it's insane. And the fact that it's so cheap makes it a lot better. We're never going to get the +2/+2 pump off of this unless we use it exactly on Arcbound Mouser, because that's our only artifact creature. But blanking removal, do we have... So here's another question. Do we have any super high value creatures that we would need to protect from removal? Or is the fact that we just have a lot of creatures what we're going for? So, like, the only high-value creatures we have that I know I would need to protect from removal is, like, Arcus Acolyte. But we don't have any creatures that, like, make the build work. So I think I'm going to cut Blacksmith skill. Because the remainder of, like, we just need to amass a board, really. We don't have to keep a specific combination of creatures alive. It's not like we're playing Delirium and we have... Dragon's Rage Channeler, like, trying to dig us into Delirium, and we want to protect him from, like, a murder or something like that. My question is, do I want Break Ties or do I want Unbounded Potential? Unbounded Potential has a high damage ceiling. Break Ties is a Naturalize. I think I'm going to cut Unbounded Potential. Okay. We have a lot of options for sideboarding. And I'm going to go with 6 white sources, which might be a lot. To splash only like 5 cards, but I'm occasionally going to want to play an Arcbound Mouser on one, and we don't need double green necessarily. We have a lot of double green cards in the 4-drop slot. This is plenty of... Why did that not... Okay, there we go. Sylvan Anthem on 2 is obviously great, grand, but like we could play a Thornglint Bridge on turn 1. I'm liking how this deck is looking. I'll see you guys in round 1. Alright, we're on the play. We have a Mouser, a Kieran, and an Anthem. This is probably going to take the 3-drop spot, and I think I'm okay with this hand. We got lands and spells. We have the only 2 white creatures in our hand. So, like, we draw any other creatures, and they're going to synergize with Sylvan Anthem. So, play Mouser, pass the turn. Opponent plays a Swamp, plays a Nested Shambler. We untap and draw Smell Fear. We're going to do this because it gains us a bunch of life. So, Proliferate, Fight. They make a tapped 1/1. We hit them for 2 and go up to 24. Opponent plays a Mishra's Factory. This might be a mono-black drafted deck. I've seen that deck happen a number of times, and generally the decks I play have beaten it, although I think we've lost to it once. When it goes to combat, hits us for 1, takes us to 23, and suspends a Profane Tutor, okay? We draw a Jewel-Eyed Cobra, play a Forest, go to combat, attack for 2. So we'll gain 2, go up to 25, opponent goes down to 16. I'm going to play the Cobra, because this develops the board, and I don't need the Scry immediately. This might convince my opponent to leave the scroll back on defense. Then we could play something like Sylvan Anthem, increasing the toughness of the Cobra, and then opponent has to reevaluate how they want to block. You know, depends on whether or not they play anything here. Okay, opponent plays a Mere Scrappling, so that does mean the opponent can like animate Factory, block the Mouser. I was gonna say chump with Scrappling, and then put 1/1 counters on the Factory. But Bannerhide Crew Shock being a combat trick here helps a lot. So we can play the Sylvan Anthem, then when our opponent makes the play that I just described, we can surprise them with a Crew Shock and kill Factory, which Stone Rains them, as well as takes out a creature. Okay, opponent fires up the Factory. Okay, let's go ahead and reinforce. They did not go for the double block here. Okay, so it's still a trade because this can pump itself. That's actually something I didn't remember. But they have to give up a creature still. So it's a 2 for 2. But opponent takes damage and still loses their land. Pass the turn. Profane Tutor coming off Suspend. So opponent goes and gets, theoretically, the best card in their deck. Okay, opponent attacks us for 1. Take 1, go to 27. So they got a non-land spell, because they didn't play a land. Play a Forest. Actually, probably should have held on to that Forest. We'll play the Kirin. Now, I could attack with the Cobra and trade with a 2/1, which would pump the Kirin and give me a treasure, but I don't think it's worth it. We'll just hang back on defense here. As much as I want to press the advantage right now. Okay, opponent plays a Mouser. Interesting. We untap. We draw Daggertooth. So, go to combat. Attack for 2 in the air. Opponent takes 2 and goes to 10. Play Daggertooth, which is now a 5/4, and we get to Scry Forest to the bottom. We want non-land spells of basically any kind. Opponent draws land number 3 and gets a Biting Grace. They're not really in a position to race right now. If we attack with the Daggertooth, they could triple block. Okay, they're getting back a Scrappling, which probably changes the math quite a bit. I think the longer we wait to attack, the worse it's going to get. So go to combat, attack with everybody. Opponent trades, chumps. Okay, they block in such a way that they do not trigger the Proliferate on damage. We get a treasure, play Jade Avenger, get a Scry, Smell Fear to the top, pass the turn. That Smell Fear is going to be huge. Opponent exiles Fairgrounds Patrol to make a Thopter, passes to their end step, reanimates a Scrappling. We untap and draw Smell Fear. So we're going to have the Daggertooth fight the Thopter, Proliferate, then Proliferate, go to combat, attack here and here. I guess I should have attacked with the Daggertooth as well. The Daggertooth they could have killed, though. They put a counter on the Jade Avenger. Oh, they didn't move to blocks. They meant to chump and then sack. Now they got to chump with the Squirrel. Yeah, that's not great. That's the problem with Moto's interface and creatures with activated abilities that don't have a cost. It's very easy to accidentally use the activated ability rather than declare a blocker or attacker. Okay, opponent plays a Constable of the Realm. So they will be able to get back their Scrappling on the end step, and then they can exile 1 non-land permanent, which will be the Guardian Kirin 100%. But now they have to, well, they have to block both creatures. Okay, we get a Smell Fear. If we try and Smell Fear first, opponent just Scrapplings in response to kill something. So go to combat. So we have to Smell Fear after combat. Attack with everybody. Okay, opponent chumps and blocks. Bushido trigger. Then they put a counter on Constable, which will exile the the flyer. Okay. We kill the Mouser. Then we fight here because proliferate is going to make this bigger. So it will actually survive. Get back our flyer, pass the turn. So we have 2 lethal creatures. Opponent has to play a blocker and reanimate a scrapling. God, okay. Unfortunately, entering with a 1/1 counter is different than having a 1/1 counter put on it, I think. At least Moto thinks it is. That might be a bug. So they get back a scrapling. We draw Endurance. Go to combat. Attack with everybody. Okay, opponent blocks and blocks. They put a counter on the Constable. They're going to exile the Daggertooth. Okay. So they take 2 in the air and they go to 3. So on their end step, in response to Abiding Grace, we're going to flash in Endurance and put their Grave back in their deck. Opponent plays a land. They play a Dromedary. So they can go to combat, move a counter over, make it a 6/6, and kill the Guardian Kieran. They're going to kill the Avenger. Okay. Opponent could have attacked there to exile the Kieran, but if they did, they would have lost to Endurance. So in response, flash Endurance, target our opponent, we get to scry. Plains to the top lets us Bannerhide Crew Shock onto the flyer and then they die. Alright, Plains to the top. Put their Grave back in their deck. They don't get a 1/1. We untap, draw Plains. Play a Plains. Bannerhide Crew Shock. Scavenge. Go to combat. Now if our opponent has an instant speedway in hand, like a Break Ties to put a 1/1 counter on the Constable, we lose. Just straight up. Alright. That was tough. It kind of tells me I want some more Death Touch creatures because of them stacking up a large Constable. Well, opponent sent me a chat message. I can't view it right now for some reason. I don't know what I'm going to cut for that Cobra, so I'm just going to run it back. Opponent said LOL and that they were going to be AFK for a couple of minutes. They really meant it when they said they were going to be AFK for a couple of minutes. Alright. It's a little action light, but I think I will keep. Opponent mulligan to 5. Alright. We draw a Dusk Shellcrawler, so lead on Thornglint Bridge, pass the turn. Opponent plays a Swamp, suspends Profane Tutor, and tap and continue to draw lands, which is less than ideal. Play Dusk Shellcrawler, have it put a counter on itself, pass the turn. Profane Tutor ticking down. Opponent plays a Swamp into a Breathless Knight. We untap and draw Jade Avenger. Play a Forest. Go to combat. Attack. Okay, no blocks for our opponent. Play Jade Avenger. I could have held up Endurance and just waited and then maybe did the Reinforce and play Jade Avenger next turn. But I think Jade Avenger having Bushido and putting the counters there actually makes more sense because Dusk Shellcrawler grants trample to 1/1 counter. 1/1 countered up creatures, I guess. The opponent plays a Dromedary, moves a counter over to the Knight, and attacks us for 3. We'll take 3. We untap. We draw Smell Fear. This line was also definitely better in the Smell Fear scenario. So, play a Forest. Put some counters here. Then, kill the Knight, which keeps a 1/1 counter on the Dromedary. Proliferate. Go to combat. Attack for 7. Opponent goes down to 18. They untap. They play a Biting Grace, but they have nowhere to put the 1/1 counter, and they can only gain life. Alright. Yeah, I think our opponent's in trouble. We untap and draw an Acolyte. So play a Plains. Play the Arcus Acolyte. Go to combat. Attack for 7. We'll leave up Endurance just in case they do have any graveyard shenanigans. But we're getting far enough ahead on board that it is unlikely our opponent will be able to come back without a Wrath. Okay, they play Scrapling. If they sack it with the intent of just immediately getting it back with a Biting Grace, they're going to be sad. Opponent plays a Plains. Like, they could move the counters all over to Clattering Augur. I don't think they're going to do that. I mean, sack Scrappling with the intent of getting, like, double value out of it. But if they get greedy, they will get punished for it. Clattering Augur can't block. They're keeping the counter on the Dromedary. Okay. And then they pass. Okay, they gain a life. We untap. We draw a Daggertooth. Counter up the Acolyte. Play a Plains. Go to combat. Attack for a lot with Trample. So if they chump, we just trample through the non-existent creature. Actually take more damage by blocking that creature than not blocking it. They take 9 and go to 3. Pass the turn. And this'll do it. Put our opponent's grave back in their deck. Alright. Well, that's a 2-0. I'll see you guys in round 2. Alright, we're on the draw this time. We got a pretty good hand, I'd say. We can play the Duskshell Crawler first if we want. I suspect we should probably hold on to it until we can put a 1/1 counter either on Endurance or on the Daggertooth. Alright, play a Forest, pass the turn. Opponent plays a Squirrel. Alright, new plan. We may have to actually fight that Squirrel with the Duskshell Crawler before it gets too large. So we're gonna curve out here. See what our opponent plays this turn, and that's gonna inform us on whether we play Endurance, whether we cast Smell Fear, that sort of stuff. We draw a Forest. If I try and just fight right now, there's a good chance my opponent could have like a Flourishing Strike. Attacking runs that same risk. The opponent doesn't block, obviously. Alright, pass the turn. We'll leave up Endurance, flash in. The shuffling the grave text probably doesn't matter as much. We might be able to get a kill on this for free. So flash Endurance. Shuffle our opponent's grave back in. Probably should have targeted myself just in case they had a really high value thing that they could, like, really high value instant. Block. See if they got a combat trick. They sack the Squirrel to itself. Alright. We get a Crew Shock, which is going to be really good with Smell Fear. Let's go ahead and play the Daggertooth, just to get a little more meat on the board. Hit them for 4. Take them to 16. Pass the turn. This was a pretty strong curve from us. Opponent basic land cycles a Mental Journey. You get a Plains, so they are at least 4 colors. And then they play a Priest of Fell Rites. Well, opponent is going to be kind of sad, I imagine. So let's reinforce... Should we reinforce Endurance or the Daggertooth? I'm not really sure that it matters. Let's reinforce Endurance, because that kind of splits up like our opponent's target prioritization. So we'll go ahead and proliferate. Then we fight, then we proliferate. Go to combat. Hit them for a lot. 14 damage, in fact. They go to 2. They untap. And they do not have a white source and an overloaded dam, so they scoop. That was a really strong curve. So opponent is playing at least some Reanimator cards, which tells me I may want this Verdant Command. As for what we are taking out for it, that is a good question. It's probably this Jade Avenger, as they kind of fill a similar role. Jade Avenger is better with 1/1 counters, of course. But if they're playing a Reanimator rare, especially one that has Unearth, I think that's the correct choice. This hand is playable. It does not have a great curve, but we get a lot of scries if we happen to draw a second Forest. Any 1 or 2 drop is a good draw here, of course, besides Sylvan Anthem, which we're already holding. So any 1 or 2 drop is great. Opponent did mulligan to 6. We kept 7. They start on a tap land. We draw Break Ties, which is not a 1 or a 2 drop. We're going to lead on Forest, because if we draw a second Forest, then we can play the Sylvan Anthem, which increases the power level of our hand quite a bit. We do have Enchantment Destruction, and we may actually be able to handle that Urza's Saga but we do need to draw another land for that to be the case. Go ahead and play a Duskshell Crawler. Counter it up. Pass the turn. So Urza's Saga going to get its second ability this turn. Opponent does have an untapped land. Okay, we need a land. That is not a land. Go to combat. Attack for 1. Opponent no blocks. Alright, pass the turn. We'll leave up Verdant Command. Man, if we had drawn a land, we would be in an insanely good position. Because we could have destroyed that Urza's Saga. They would only have gotten 1 construct. They wouldn't be able to tutor up an artifact here. They get a Brainstone. They play another land. They have some 5/5s now. They attack us for 5. So we gotta reinforce. Because we will need to actually fight one of these constructs to kind of stem the damage here. Oh my gosh. Alright, we gotta pass. That's terrible. Opponent untaps. They play a Hard Evidence, which gives them another token, which makes the constructs bigger. They go to combat. They attack. Reinforce. Take 6. Go to 9. Opponent plays Plains, plays a Priest of Fell Rites. We untap. We draw Smell Fear, but it's going to be way too late. Oh, man. I mean, I guess they are running out of cards. Pass the turn. They now have Delirium, so the crabs can attack. We can gain a little bit of life off of Verdant Command. They did not discard any cards in their hand. Yeah, this is all because we missed our 3rd land drop and still haven't gotten it. So take a bunch of damage, go to 2. Wow. Okay. So sideboard, I am going to bring in Crack Open because my opponent's deck is just, it's all artifacts and stuff. I'm going to drop this Funnel Web Recluse, I think, which is a little dangerous, but I think ultimately it's fine. Verdant Command might be worse than Jade Avenger. It would have been decent there, but I just never drew any mana. It might be worse than just the Death Touch Cobra, really. Well, let's run it back. Alright, we'll play first. This is a hand we will keep. Alright, we'll lead on a forest. I'm probably going to play Sylvan Anthem before I play the Duskshell Crawler, just so I do get the Scry. Okay, opponent leads on Goldmire Bridge. We draw Captured by Legox. Play Sylvan Anthem. Pass the turn. If my opponent plays Urza's Saga, I'm immediately going to naturalize it. Opponent plays a Squirrel. Plays a tap land. We untap. Draw Jewel-Eyed Cobra. Play a Plains. Let's play the Cobra. Get a Scry. Daggertooth is going to be pretty good, so I'm going to leave it on top. Opponent untaps. They play an island. They Vindicate Sylvan Anthem. Okay. It's not great, but it's not the end of the world. Play a forest. Play Daggertooth. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. If they play a big creature here and we capture, put a 1/1 counter on each of our guys. There we go. Opponent's probably not going to have a fun time. I mean, they can sack the treasure to make the squirrel a 2/2, and then they could trade with the Cobra. Alternatively, is there a double Duskshell play in here somewhere? We could put 2 1/1 counters on the Daggertooth. I think it's just worse than using this capture. Opponent does not have enough mana to sack Aerialist in response, meaning that this should resolve and allow us to get the support trigger. Go to combat. We can either make them sack their treasure by attacking with the Cobra or just attack with the Daggertooth, and I think the Daggertooth is better. Because next turn we can give this guy trample. We can make sure that both of our creatures are well out of range of any amount of sacrificing they could do. We might be able to snipe something with Foundation Breaker. It might make our attacks better. We've got options. Opponent, basic land cycles and Orchard Strider. Okay. So they would have gotten value out of that treasure regardless of whether we allowed them to chump or not. The basic land cycling also makes sense for why they're playing their Reanimator rare, because now they could like use it to get back a 6/4 kind of a deal. Opponent plays a late to dinner Reanimating Orchard Strider. That's bad. We draw a Deepwood Denizen, which I do want to play to start drawing cards. Opponent does not have the mana to sack a food, but they will shortly. Deepwood Denizen's ability costs 4. Next turn, if we draw a land, we could make it cost 3 by playing a Dusk Shellcrawler first. We can't get Daggertooth out of range of the Strider, and we could make the Cobra big enough to attack around the Squirrel, and it would have Death Touch and Trample, but there's no way our opponent would block with an Orchard Strider. Let's go ahead and play the Denizen then. This is not fantastic. 5 mana, opponent plays Sweep the Skies, cast with a bunch of colors, and they play a tap land. We untap and draw a forest, which is kind of what we needed last turn. So play the Crawler. I'm going to put a counter on the Denizen, and then I'm going to pass. The idea here is we're going to hopefully draw a Smell Fear very shortly. So opponent goes to combat, they attack us with a bunch of Thopters. That's fine, we don't particularly care. Not yet, anyway. Opponent has enough mana they can activate the Squirrel to sack twice, or they could activate 3 foods. We draw Thornglint Bridge, which is not fantastic. We untap. Okay, we draw Smell Fear. Now the problem is, the Squirrel can sack itself, which means there's nothing I can target with Smell Fear that actually matters. The proliferating is nice. If we kill the Squirrel, that does solve a lot of problems, but not all of them. And there's a question of whether or not we want to play the other Dusk Shellcrawler first. I think we would. And then generally we would fight with the Daggertooth, I think, because the option or the ability to double proliferate would be the best. So they could get 3 1/1 counters on this, making it a 5/5, which would be enough to kill the Daggertooth, only if they sack the foods. If I put a counter on the Daggertooth first, they may just sack the Squirrel to itself. I could put a counter on the other Dusk Shellcrawler just to make the board wider, but I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm going to make the Daggertooth bigger. This is kind of risky. Then we'll have the Daggertooth fight the Squirrel. Okay, they sack the Burdened Aerialist to draw a card and gain a life. Oh, I should have left up a green mana for activating Deepwood Denizen. That's actually a pretty big punt. And they sack the Squirrel to itself. They gain a life and draw. We still get to proliferate, because we still have a legal target for the spell. And I think we got to start racing. Opponent can trade with the Daggertooth, and they take a lot more damage if they do. Otherwise, they can kill Deepwood Denizen, which would stop us from drawing a lot of cards. I should have left up a green mana. That was such a huge punt. We could have gotten an extra card here, and we're not using this mana for anything else otherwise. So we do a ton of damage, trample down to 4 life left, play a Thornglint Bridge, and pass. We can snipe an artifact or enchantment if we need to. Opponent has a bunch of flyers, but we're still firmly in the lead unless they have a massive bounce spell or a board wipe. So we can kill that Sojourner's Companion unless something else more threatening appears. Opponent thinking. They play another Burdened Aerialist. And then they play a Breathless Knight. Breathless Knight having lifelink is annoying. So we untap. We draw nothing. God, this is where that extra card would really matter a lot. Play Foundation Breaker. Kill their 4/4. And I think we just got to do the big swing. They have no mana to sack food. They have a lot of power that they have to block. And Death Touch and Trample means we only have to assign 1 damage to each blocker from the Cobra. because of the wording of those two abilities. And so for newer Magic players, if they generally don't put Death Touch and Trample on the same creature because the interaction between them is unintuitive. But if you're really new to Magic, this is one of the first weird tricks you might encounter. Trample says you have to assign lethal damage to a creature before you can, and then you assign the remainder of the damage to your opponent or to the next blocker and so on. If you have a Death Touch and Trample, lethal damage is 1 damage because Death Touch says any amount of damage is lethal damage to a creature. So if your opponent puts a 6 toughness creature in front of a 5/3 Death Touch Trample, you assign 1 damage to that 6 toughness creature and then 4 damage to your opponent. And it's a way that you can kind of get sneaky, doing extra damage. So they have 6 power in front of this Urban Daggertooth. But they die here? No, because they gain life. Lifelink can save them. I forgot about that. Okay, we have nothing to proliferate, unfortunately. Make a treasure. Pass the turn. So they're at 2. They have a 0/3 that can block our Foundation Breaker indefinitely. They have food to gain life, and they have extra draws off of their clue. They play a Sinister Starfish, so they can manipulate their top deck. They have another Ravenous Squirrel, which is very bad for us. We untap and get another Daggertooth. This one is significantly worse because we do not have a way to put 1/1 counters on it. Pass the turn. Opponent draws an extra card by sacking the clue. They untap. This is where an Unbounded potential would be huge, because we could just swing with everything and then put 1/1 counters on whatever doesn't get blocked. We can't really do that or anything like that right now with what's left in our deck. We draw a land, play a Plains, pass the turn. I think our best possible top deck is Arcus Acolyte, because we could put a 1/1 counter on each creature we control that way. Opponent casts a Mental Journey and draws a bunch of cards. Okay, that's bad. Is this game 2 or 3? This is game 2. We need to win this one. They make the squirrel a flyer. Okay. So you can sack some foods, gain some life, put some distance between us and them. Take 4, go to 12. They play an Orchard Strider, which is really bad. Alright, we get a Bannerhide Crew Shock. So I could put up to 6 1/1 counters on that Urban Daggertooth, and if I do that, it has 9 toughness, 10 power, and they would have to block with a lot of stuff. I could split up the 1/1 counters, but I think that's worse. It's just risky to put them all on one. So reinforce the Daggertooth. Then scavenge onto the Daggertooth. Go to combat. Attack for 10. So they have to put at least 6 toughness in front of it, and they can do that by blocking with the crab and the starfish. Problem is, I don't think we can race all those foods. They're keeping the starfish. That tells me they don't have what they need to win, or at least don't think they have what they need to win. Make sure the Orchard Strider dies. They surveil. They put an island into the grave. Take them to 2. We proliferate, make this bigger. Opponent can gain 15 life. We need to be able to kill that squirrel, so we'd have to draw a Smell Fear to do it, and then our opponent would have to have nothing. Which is possible. Opponent plays a land. That's good news, I think. We might just sack all their foods here to stay alive a little bit longer. Do more damage. They play a Draykeeper. Oh, I don't think that does it. If we draw Smell Fear, it's game over. Actually, it might just be game over if we attack. Is there a... Hang on, Scryfall. Is there an edict on attacks? So the text would be attacking creature, and the set would be Modern Horizons 2. I know there's Lens Flare. Our opponent could only have 1, and that wouldn't be enough, I don't think, because it would still deal combat damage. They don't have Soul Snare. So unless they just have hard removal, I don't think they can survive this attack. The question is, do I need to attack with Foundation Breaker 2? They have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 toughness. They can sack 2 foods, gain 6 life, and increase the toughness by 2, which is 13 toughness. If we attack with Foundation Breaker, they could block it for free with the Starfish, which would mean 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 toughness in front of the Dagger Tooth. But they don't even need to do that, they can just gain the life. I think we attack with the Foundation Breaker as well. So if our opponent sacks 2 foods and puts all of the squirrels in the Dray Keeper in front of the Dagger Tooth, they can trade. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 1 damage tramples over. Foundation Breaker doesn't die. Man, I wish we could stop top-decking lands. Opponent surveils a Seal of Removal into the grave. We kill everything. We proliferate. There's nothing to proliferate. And this is still game 2. So there is a game 3 after this, which means I have to be more mindful of the clock, especially after taking that long to decide on something I was probably going to do anyway. Opponent immediately surveils a swamp into the grave. They play a land, and they pass. So we're at least going to get in for damage. They're going to have to sack a bunch of food. We draw a Mouser. Go to combat. Attack for 2. Opponent takes 2, it goes to 5. After sacking their foods, they pick up Skyblade's Boon. Okay, play a Mouser, F6. I will also be restarting the client, provided we go to game 3. I'll be restarting in between games, just to make sure we mitigate the lag. We have no effects on our opponent's turn. They surveil on their upkeep. They leave it on top. That's bad news for us. They play Scuttletide, which is an infinite number of... And by infinite number, I mean 1, 1, 4. Untap and draw the squirrel. Play the squirrel, pass the turn. Ah, yes, I see. So they can Skyblade's Boon, Scuttletide for a pseudo-infinite combo. For 3 crabs a turn. It's pretty good. We do have another Naturalize in the deck, and if we can take out Scuttletide, I think my opponent's done. We have no black mana in our deck unless we have a treasure, and we've used our 1 treasure, I think. I get a Brainstone. Opponent activates Brainstone. They might mill themselves out. So if we draw Endurance, we need to Endurance ourselves. They play an Urza's Saga. That's bad. Okay, come on. Crack open. Dusk Shell Crawler, okay. Play the Crawler. Put a counter here. F6. Opponent is using a lot of their time, which I think is going to make us favored in the event that we do go to game 3. The problem is they're going to get a couple of really big tokens that we may not be able to deal with. We might be able to deal with 1. We have no way to mill our opponent. I guess I should have put that counter on the Mouser, but if we could get a Guardian Kieran, Radiant Epicure is a problem. Drains us of a lot of life. Guardian Kieran makes them attacking into us bad, but I think they've gained enough life that we can't race anymore. Get a Smell Fear. I don't think we Smell Fear yet. There's a couple of things we could draw to put 1/1 counters on stuff, I think still. 7/7 tokens suck. They make another token. Oh no, this is game 3, because game 1 we beat them. Game 2 we lost to Saga when we only drew 2 cards. Unless that was game 1. Yeah, we're not going to have enough blockers. And we actually can't stop them from just gaining flying and kill us. Alright. Felt like that was winnable. That immediate Vindicate on the Sylvan Anthem. That was the match regardless. Okay, we did win game 1. That was definitely winnable. Round 2, we would have destroyed them if we'd been able to kill Urza's Saga. And all we needed to do was draw a land. We might have even had 2 turns to do it, because I think we could have handled 1 token, but that's just unfortunate. I'll see you guys in round 3. Alright, we are on the play for round 3, and this looks like a pretty decent hand we'll keep. Wish we had a slightly better curve, but we got a bunch of Proliferate, we got a Fight spell, we've got a really excellent creature to put 1/1 counters on. I mean, we'll be super, super dead to like a Flay Essence or a Murder, but lead on Thornglint Bridge, pass the turn. Opponent plays a Mountain into a Ragavan. Oh my god. Okay, I've done like 37 drafts. I've not seen a single Ragavan, and I've played against Ragavan like 4 times now. Ugh. Oh, I'm so irritated by this. Picked the wrong hand to have to deal with this too. Okay, opponent plays a Mishra's Factory. Oh my god. Come on! Okay. Pass the turn. Unbelievable. That is the best start from a limited deck I have ever seen. Oh my gosh. Yeah, what do I even do here? I have no way to currently kill anything. I'm gonna die to my own Daggertooth. Play Jade Avenger, pass the turn. Nope, I'm actually just dead. They just animate Mishra's Factory and we die. Okay. I have nothing that helps against a turn 1 Ragavan. Not in the sideboard to add to the deck, anyway. I have ways to deal with it in the deck. This hand might apparently be too slow, because you know my opponent's keeping Ragavan in their opener. They're never not going to have it. Unfortunately, we have lands and spells, so that's what we're going to have to do. All the lights in the basement just flickered, so I might not be able to finish this video. That was really weird. I'll be kind of upset if we lose power. There's no reason we should lose power. It's not storming or anything. How? Why? Why is this always the case? Yep. I mean, I hope you guys don't like watching Magic, because you're not going to see it. You're not going to see any today. Uh-huh. Well, at least it's a spell they can't cast. Oh, never mind. Yep, you got it. Yeah, we'll play a crawler, put the counter on the crawler. Pass the turn. They're just going to have removal for it. You know they drafted that as their first rare, so they're just playing Protect the Ragavan. Okay. Thank God. I need to kill that. And it's got to be now. Play Ravenous Squirrel, pass the turn. Opponent plays a land. I play an Arcbound Whelp, which triggers Evolve on the Scurry Oak. That is ours, which is a card we have never seen and never draft, or like in this entire draft. But, you know, when it would be ideal for our opponent to get it, they get it off the top of our deck. Oh my gosh. I can't get over how upset I am about that. And normally, normally I can kind of keep my cool playing this game. This is the most tilting thing ever. Like, I had a reasonable shot at 2-1-ing here. I actually had a reasonable shot of 3-0-ing. But we got unlucky by just not drawing a third land for 5 turns and our opponent having one of the chase rares / mythics of the set. And then my opponent has an unbeatable mythic on turn 1. And people I know, if they actually watch this video, anybody who is like, Kano, why do you always complain about Ragavan? It's not that overpowered of a card. This is why it's overpowered. But Kano, you're unlimited. It's a constructed tier playable mythic. I don't care. Yes. It was a complete straw man for my audience that make that argument. Yes. I intentionally gave it a mocking voice. But yeah, I didn't want to play Magic anyway. Alright, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this content. If you did, please leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel if you're so inclined, and remember you can follow me on Twitch. Same username over there as you find me on here. I stream Wednesdays in the afternoon, sometimes the evening. The day this video goes up, I'll be streaming. I don't know if I started streaming before. I don't know if it's going to be later in the day. It'll be at some point today. So you're going to want to subscribe, or not subscribe, you're going to want to follow me on Twitch so you know when that's happening. The next best place to find announcements and stuff for future events is in the Discord. Links in the description below. Feel free to join. If that's interesting to you, it's a lot of fun. We hang out with a lot of cool people. We do a lot of brewing and shenanigans there. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this content, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye! Hey, just wanted to give a shout out to my patrons for the month of August. You guys are wonderful, and I really appreciate your support. It's been helping me make a lot of good content. If you want your name to show up in this list, there's a link to my Patreon in the description down below if you want to support this channel. Thank you so much.